Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Uncommon Ad Space is an ad network which is designed to connect brands and advertisers with independent content creators and alternative media outlets. Its creators believe there is collusion among big tech companies and media agencies to suppress free speech and prevent content creators who operate outside the mainstream from raising advertising revenue. Lee Taylor, the managing director of marketing agency Uncommon Sense, is the man behind this. He joins me now alongside Toby Young from the Free Speech Union. Yeah. Toby, do you want to tell us why such a measure is needed in these times?
Yeah, so I publish, in addition to running the Free Speech Union, I publish this alternative news publishing site called The Daily Skeptic. And it's really, really difficult to get advertising, to get anyone to advertise on it, even though we get about 1.5 million page views per month. So it's huge. It rivals mainstream media publications. Lots of people read it. It's read by MPs, but we can't get any advertising. Why? Because there are these various agencies. They describe themselves as advertising ratings agencies, and what they say to advertisers is, don't advertise on this site. It's toxic. It spreads misinformation and disinformation, by which they mean anything that challenges the mainstream narrative. Yes. If you challenge the regime, you're going to get designated as an unsafe space for advertisers to place their products in. So I'm finding it, even though it's a huge success, hugely popular, I can't get almost any advertising at all because of the dominance. And these agencies are funded by the State Department in the US, the US Department of Defense, by our own Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I'm talking about agencies like the Global Disinformation Index, NewsGuard. What they do is they stop anyone giving money, any advertisers giving money to sites like Spiked, like Zero Hedge. Even GB News has been successfully boycotted by some of these. They're basically the organs of the censorship industrial complex, trying to strangle alternative news publishers because they're threatened by the challenge they pose to the mainstream narrative.
And isn't it strangely that we have these bodies, these agencies that have so much power when really they are clearly motivated from a particular ideological standpoint?
Completely. It certainly feels like they've been captured ideologically, and they're all following the same narrative. I mean, the Daily Skeptic, it produces, information about the weather. I mean, is that really hate speech? Is that really something that you wouldn't want to be associated with as an advertiser?
So when did you come up with this idea, and how did you think about implementing it?
So, probably about 10 years ago, I've seen changes in the advertising world, and then certainly over the last 6, the alternative media, the new mediascape has blown up, has got really huge. So I was confused as why advertisers weren't migrating their advertising spend over here. And then, as Toby said, actually not only were they not advertising and spending, they're being censored. So I had to make this my problem. Now, I could sit and complain about it, but actually I needed to find a solution. So to start with, I thought, why don't I go and glue myself some work of art? That didn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Weird, that, isn't it?
Strange.
Yeah.
So actually I thought, there's got to be a better way. Why don't we make this into an opportunity? And actually, so we set up a network, and what our platform does is it provides a conduit between businesses and advertisers and publishers, so they can advertise on the new media publishing place.
That's great. Toby, I want to ask you about this, though, because there are activist groups, such as Hope Not Hate and people like this, who will smear people like Spiked or GB News or whatever, or the Daily Skeptic as, wrong-uns, basically, and then effectively intimidate people from advertising, scare the advertisers away. Yeah. How can you deal with that? It's all very well tackling the agencies, but what about those activist groups?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I think you have to expose the fact that when they attack you for publishing misinformation or disinformation or hate speech, and when they try and get laws passed in parliaments, like the law that's going through the Irish Parliament, there's another one heading towards us in the Northern Irish Parliament, and now that that's about to get up and running. There's one in Australia, one in New Zealand. It's extraordinary, the power and influence of these activist groups trying to throttle alternative news publishing sites. And I think the one way to tackle it is to say to them, we're not really publishing misinformation or disinformation. Saying that you don't think trans women are women isn't really hate speech, is it? You just disapprove of what I'm producing. You just don't share my politics, and you're dressing that up as, you're publishing false and misleading information. But if you can show who they're funded by, what their agenda is, the previous activist groups they've been involved with, think you can gradually denude them of their power and their influence. And, you know, it's not, as far as persuading people not to go to sites like the Daily Sceptic or Zero Hedge or Spiked or watch GB News, it's not successful. You know, the public are voting with their eyeballs.
And that's the thing. So this people can be exposed in this way. These activists, they're not telling the truth. So what's been the response?
The response has been great. So we went live probably about 3-4 weeks ago now, and I've had a number of people come on to say, we didn't even know this was a problem. We want to jump. How can we advertise on these networks? We didn't even know we could.
Yeah.
We've been blocked for in the past. We've had letters of support saying what you're doing is fantastic because we're actually giving access to businesses direct to this new media. We've had a few people say, actually, you shouldn't really be doing this, but we've ignored those.
Yeah, good idea.
The response has been great. We've also had publishers come on, like the Conservative woman, to say, we've been banned as well. Can you help us out with advertising? So the response has been amazing.
Finally, what's the website? Where can people find more?
It's called uncommonadspace.com.
That's fantastic. And Toby, you've got a live event, I believe, coming up.
Yes, so me and GB News' very own Nick Dixon on Headliners several times a week. We do a weekly podcast called The Weekly Sceptic, and we're doing a live show at the Hippodrome just off Leicester Square tomorrow. And if you want to buy a ticket, go to our new podcasting platform, basedmedia.org, click on events, and you can get a ticket for only £25. Where else can you see a West End show, a 2-hour show with the hilarious stand-up comedian Nick Dixon for just £25? It's a bargain.
And you're quite the showman yourself, Toby. I mean, I think you're doing yourself down. So.
Well, it's a good show. We've done it twice before. Audiences love it. It's going to be a great occasion, I think, a great night.
That's fantastic. Just very quickly, what will you be covering? What kind of things will you be talking about?
We'll be talking about Lindsay Smith getting banned by Newcastle Football Club. We might talk about Joe Phoenix's incredible victory and her courage in standing up to the Open University. We'll talk about the armed forces becoming increasingly woke and finding it hard to recruit heterosexual white men because they're just not welcome in the armed forces anymore. A lot of stuff to cover, Andrew.
Fantastic. Toby and Lee, thank you both very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And there's loads more to come on Free Speech Nation, including Joe